Sir, can we start?
Senthil, good evening.
Yes.
When would you like us to get started?
Yes, sir, we can start, please.
Senthil, good evening. When would you like us to get started?
Yes, sir, we can start, please.
How many do we have logged in?
21, sir.
Okay, super. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to this webinar of IIT Alumni Center. This is the first webinar where we are having students from the IITs speak to us. In that sense, this is a unique and a special webinar. The student group who would be sharing their experiences with us today are known as Team Avishkar. They are from IIT Madras. In many ways, this is a very unique student group. This group was originally formed 4 years ago. And every year, as some members of the group pass out, they recruit new members. So it's been a kind of a student, more than a student group. It's been a student's institution. Second thing which makes Team Avishkar very special is their achievements. So without much further ado, I'm now handing you over to Team Avishkar. And after a brief presentation, they would be ready to share answers to your questions as well as anecdotes. Over to Team Avishkar. Bharat and team, over to you all.
Many thanks, sir, for the opportunity and for the introduction. I'm Yash Gautam from Team Avishkar Hyperloop. And yeah, the question is, why should Elon Musk hang out with students from IIT Madras? Like, we are a group of kids with usual rut of deadlines, academic pressure, but with a very diverse academic background. But the thing is, why should the tech titan care? We are Team Avishkar Hyperloop, and you might have come across the concept and you might have realized the concept itself is simply better. It is good for the planet. But we have a greater point to prove. We are here to prove that we cannot stagnate with what we made yesterday, to prove that we have to shape our tomorrow today, to prove that India is yet to spread its wing. It is the ability to create the impact on world at large that excites us, to create something new from scratch that excites us. But we can't help but wonder, why create Hyperloop? Why waste money? But then we might as well ask, why shoot ourselves up to the moon? Why venture into the depths of Earth? Why climb the highest mountains? We choose to do these things not because they are easy, but because they are hard, because the goal and that challenge is the one that we are willing to accept. So with that note, let's dive deeper into what Avishkar has been doing, what the Hyperloop ecosystem in general is up to, and how close are you to actually riding Hyperloop to your commute in the future. When in 2013 Elon Musk presented his idea of Hyperloop, then there were not many takers, and especially because it was one of his radical ideas. It would require a huge amount of R&D to establish the network, to develop the technologies, the novel propulsion mechanisms, the levitation mechanisms, and many, many such things that were not even pointed out in the initial paper. So he came up with the idea of SpaceX Hyperloop pod competition and fostering student innovation in the field. And as you can see, there were many student teams that sprung up across the globe to participate in the competition. And it is a very proud thing for us that the student community has been churning out a huge number of research and clocking many, many patents in the recent times. And the student community of Hyperloop has actually brought Hyperloop in sight. It is now tangible than ever before. But one more thing that is remarkable is if you see, Avishkar is kind of the flag bearer in India for the Hyperloop community, as all other major research centers are either in Europe or North Americas. Case for Hyperloop. What we have initially envisioned and have done studies for is the Chennai-Bengaluru Hyperloop corridor. And Hyperloop is better because it combines the conveniences of all other modes of transportation while cutting down on carbon emissions severely. It cuts down on carbon emission because of its nature of levitating pods, traveling in a vacuum environment with minimal drag, as well as regenerative braking and solar power, while maintaining the cost at the lower end of the current spectrum. So Team Avishkar started out in 2017 as a student project in IIT Madras, as a bunch of highly motivated students from across several disciplines who were brought together by their passion for innovative and sustainable tech. We all commenced our journey with a dream in mind of Indian Hyperloop. No one had expected that we would grow to such heights.
Incubation server IIT Madras
So I think there's someone has unmuted. So that was the beginning. In the first iteration of the team in September of 2017, when we started and we tried to participate in the SpaceX Hyperloop pod competition, we were very, very faithful to the initial idea that was proposed. In conventional propulsion mechanisms were not in the radar. We were trying to develop the dual-sided linear induction motor. We were trying to build levitation setups. And the primary report that preliminary design report that we submitted to SpaceX was one among the top 47 who got selected for the next round of final design review. We could not make it to the SpaceX finale in our first iteration of the team in 2017, but we were invited there as spectators, and spectate we did. We learned a lot of things. We learned that most of the teams who had been there were there with tests. They had a lot of tests, test results. They had developed a lot of technologies. And we learned a lot of things, the ins and outs of the competition and how everything worked. We came back with ever more enthusiasm and energy to do things. As we moved on to the Team 2.0, we developed much better technologies. But the key thing that we did was we had realism. We had started research into technologies like linear induction motor and levitation. But this time we went with BLDC motors while parallelly conducting our research. Finally, in 2018, the Team 2.0 of Avishkar Hyperloop, we were able to get into the finale of SpaceX Hyperloop. And that was a very, very proud moment for all of India. As we reached the SpaceX headquarters in Los Angeles, it was raining tests. there were tests, and all other teams were there who had been there for a month and had their pods assembled and ready for testing and the final procedures at SpaceX. Our pod was still disassembled, and we had to cruise through the assembly phase as we reached just 1 week before. Later, we cleared many tests and came out in top 7 or at the 7th place at the SpaceX, and that was a proud moment for us when we finished in the top 10 at the SpaceX Hyperloop pod competition out of the 1,600 teams that started out. So highlight of the day was, of course, Mr. Elon Musk himself, who took us through his plans for electric vehicles in India and across the world, how he had been doing it and what his plans were. That this SpaceX is the flashiest point on a resume, but we had our ace up our sleeves. The research programs that we started in levitation and LIM, they were making some real progress. And we came up with a much better pod in the next year, 2020. We call it Cyberpod, because of course, Elon Musk, and when we simulated it, it had a very good drag coefficient also. In 2020, we were ready to manufacture our third iteration or our next iteration of the pod when the pandemic struck, and we couldn't, and we were all sent to our homes, and we couldn't do it anymore. Electrodynamic wheel was the key invention that we made in that year. And it was one that could levitate and propel the pod simultaneously. After having gone, this 3.0 team was the main team that bore the brunt of the pandemic. But we rebuilt again in 2020, October, when we recruited a fresh set of students and went into team 4.0. 4.0 to me is marked by ambitious technologies. We revamped the technologies in all major subsystems, changed working principles itself, sometimes implemented completely new physics. We implemented the linear induction motor. We developed test setters for levitation. Using circular induction motor, we developed battery management system, contactless braking, and many more. And we developed tests for each of these. The pod that we built in 2021 was made with extreme hardships under the peak of the second wave. When we reached the campus with great support from the admin of IIT and our sponsors, the second wave was already at its peak, and we had to manufacture it during that time, and it was incredibly tough, but we persevered through. The key technologies that we developed was linear induction motor, contactless eddy current braking, and in-house control mechanism of the inverter. Later, we also won the most scalable design award at the European Hyperloop Week, among many others. And in fact, we were the only team who couldn't go to the Valencia, Spain for the competition, but still won an award. This is a clip of a pod run that we did at our campus behind NAC in IIT Madras. Of course, all of the progress that we made got a lot of media attention from all the national and international media houses. This year, we are here ready at Avishkar 5.0, where we have a lot bigger ambitions and dreams and many things to do. We have been researching on Hyperloop tube, on levitation and propulsion, on the control mechanisms, and we are here to make it happen. This at Avishkar Hyperloop, we divide ourselves in 4 groups: electrical, mechanical, electromagnetic, and business. Electrical consists of high power embedded. Electromagnetic has propulsion, levitation, and braking. Mechanical has chassis, infrastructure. The key tube is part of the team who are working on the scalable tube designs, aerodynamics, and stability. The technologies that we are building are on-track propulsion using linear induction motor, which we aim to make extremely cost-effective and put it on track for lowering the weight of the pod. The levitation mechanism using circular induction motor, which we plan to test in the coming year, and propulsion and levitation drives. We have also clocked many patents for our technologies, and we plan to do many more in this year. But the crown jewel that we have for this year is the 500-meter and 2-meter diameter tube that we are going to build at the IIT Madras campus. This tube design we have developed over the past 1 year of research, where the key highlight of the design is the cost effectiveness. We are going to build this first of its kind student-run facility at the Theur campus of IIT Madras at a very low budget as compared to any other project that has been proposed worldwide. This testing facility will only be second to the SpaceX Hyperloop facility at the Los Angeles. Later on, we plan to move on to develop the 10-kilometer stretch of the same tube, where we will do the full-scale pilot of Hyperloop technology, establish operational parameters and safety procedures with a 4-meter diameter full-scale Hyperloop tube, and that we plan to do by mid of 2024. We have also gotten a prototype manufactured using our patented design of the tube that was inaugurated by Dr. Pawan Goenka, the chairman of InSpace. The prototype that we plan to make, that we have made, is for testing the structural integrity of our patented tube design, as well as for vacuum compatibility tests of our subsystems and ironing out any manufacturing issues that might be there in our tube. This is a plan that we have went over in 2022. By 2022, that is next year, we will build a 500-meter first of its kind Hyperloop tube in the world, where we will do a pod run of a completely contactless pod, propulsion, levitation, as well as braking, everything contactless at a very effective cost rates. Then we will go on to build a 10-kilometer tube, which will be a complete pilot phase of Hyperloop, where we will establish full-scale standards, safety, operational standards, and finally implementation of commercial Hyperloop corridor in 2028 to 2030. And of course, for this, we need support from everyone, including you, companies, consortium, companies, and sponsors, and a lot of people. Thank you. Bharat will take over from here, and he will take you through interesting anecdotes that we have.
Thank you so much, Yash. That was a nice presentation. Before that, before I dive into the stories that define us, if you have any questions regarding whatever was said in the presentation, you can just throw them into the chat box. Yep, yeah. I'll just wait for 2 minutes before I start the presentation again. Yeah. Yes, there is a question from Anand Krishnan. So what is the role of the Hyperloop Foundation mentoring, guidance, or nothing? So just to clarify that we are not a Hyperloop Foundation. We are a student team from IIT Madras, and the team members who are in the team are students who are doing their undergraduate or graduate degrees at IIT Madras. And year on year, we as students develop Hyperloop technologies at a scalable level. And so basically, we are student teams, but we are guided by faculty advisors who are professors in their respective departments. And whenever in doubt, we always consult our professors regarding the technical details or financial aspects as well. If that's what the question was. Is there a way to put small money into the project? Yes, so we do have some crowd. So apart from the sponsorship campaigns that we conduct, we also do some crowdsourcing campaigns where we so we have a joy of giving a platform on the IIT and Alumni Association where people can donate money to Avishkar projects. Apart from that, yeah.
If I can clarify my question,
Yes.
are you still, is that X prize still on or that's over? So if you do build a Hyperloop, will Elon Musk have anything to do with it?
No, sir. So basically Elon Musk comes into the picture only because he organized the SpaceX Hyperloop pod competition, and we were a participant of the competition.
Right.
So the Hyperloop, which we are working on, is for India only.
So
And-
Elon Musk is not in this space commercially. He made that clear a while ago, like before starting of the competitions itself, that he's not going to enter this field in a commercial aspect.
Okay. And my last point was that, is there a community of people outside IIT Madras, the other teams and so on? Have they all got something? I mean, are you learning from each other? Because clearly this is exciting stuff. If there are
Right,
10
sir.
teams which participated, are there 2 or 3 other teams? You showed in that first map, there were like 20 odd teams.
Yes,
Is
sir.
there a larger community or you guys are working just on your own?
Sir, so basically, if we consider India, like we do not have many participations from India in the Hyperloop space. But if we think about Europe, like where they have like lots of student teams from Switzerland, Netherlands, Germany, working in the Hyperloop space. So we do get to interact with them via social media, or let's say at the events if we do attend the events. But apart from that, there is no such collaboration that we have with the teams. So as of now, we are proceeding as a single team only.
Okay.
But we do seek technical help or technical interactions with the other teams at the events.
Bharat, may I intervene here? This is Ravi Santanan here.
Sure, sir.
Anant, while Elon Musk was organizing this competition, and they were also mentoring them once a month, all the results and all the data was put out as an open source information, accessible to everyone. And so was it a few months ago with the European Hyperloop competition. But really speaking, when it was decided to cancel their plans to travel to Valencia for the European Hyperloop competition, and that was just done about 3 days before they were to leave, at that time, we came to a very different kind of question, Anant. The question was, why do we have to go around the world to develop? Why can't we do it here? And why can't people from the world come here and develop along with us? So one of the results of that is what the team mentioned to you a little while ago, the decision to build. The reason we are going everywhere was because we didn't have a tube. We didn't have a test track. So the decision to build a test track originated from there. Hopefully, at some point of time, the kind of foundation that you spoke of, a Hyperloop foundation, is something that should happen around the test track that Team Avishkar is building.
Got it.
That's the way I would put it.
Okay.
And I think, I hope that answers your question.
Sure. Thank you.
Over to you guys, over to the team. I'm exiting, I'm muting.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you. Thank you. Okay. So there was one more question on whether anyone can be a part of the team. So basically, currently we are only recruiting students of IIT Madras from in our team. But yeah, you never know what lies in the future ahead. Okay. So I'll just dive into the stories that define us as a team. So Yash had gone through the journey of Team Avishkar Hyperloop over the 4 years that we have been developing Hyperloop, and also the future goals, future plans that we have of commercializing Hyperloop in India. But we should also not forget that this is a student team, and like this course. Yeah, so this is a student team, and basically whatever we have done like here is made of small interesting stories, and we have taken the liberty to like divide this 4 years of Avishkar Hyperloop and into small anecdotes. So yeah, so basically if I go into the first anecdote, like, isn't Avishkar a startup? So this is one of the many frequent questions that we are asked about. Like, Avishkar is working on these many projects and these large scale projects of building Hyperloop, commercializing Hyperloop at a full scale level. So it has to be a startup, but we just want to just clarify that we are student teams only, and we are a student team, and whatever we do here is just out of our interest and our passion to work on science and technologies. Yeah.
And adding on to what Bharat said, we have continued for the past 4 years as a student team. So we have basically developed a mechanism as to transfer knowledge from one team to another. So basically we recruit new people every year and then train them onto what goes in building Hyperloop. And this was one of the case, like Dr. Pawan Goenka visited us in last 10 days, and he was also surprised to see such a student team is having such big goals of 7-8 years, like such futuristic goals. So yeah, like we are not a startup. This is just a student team, and we are working at our own interest.
Yes. Yeah. Thanks, Vibhor. Yeah, Vibhor, do you want to continue with the tradition continues part as well?
Yeah, sure. So tradition continues. Like, this is sort of a story where in the 2019, where we finished, we started assembling our first Hyperloop pod. This was the first Hyperloop pod, like self-propelling Hyperloop pod in India. And after we have completely assembled, we thought of, like, on the day we completely assembled, we thought of trying a test run at 4 p.m. in the evening. But because of some difficulties and some problems associated with electrical or some track alignments issues, this got stretched to 4:30 a.m. in the morning of the next day. So what we thought was, after completing the test run, we would go for a dinner and have some kind of team treat. But that got shifted by almost 12 and a half hours. So this was like a moment where most of the restaurants and anything won't be open. So there was one idli shop near our Krishna Gate in IIT Madras. So that was the shop open in this, like, at 5 a.m. in the morning, and we went there and ate idlis. So this was kind of a tradition which we followed, like eating these kind of things, local like not giving big treats after just the pod run. So this kind of became a tradition for the Avishkar over the years. After the every pod run, we go to idli shop or Maggie shop, whatever we get at that time. So this is kind of the tradition. Yeah, Bharat.
Thank you, Vibhor. And if I flash back, like if I go back to the 2019 Spaces Hyperloop pod competition, so we had been working on the pod since the month of May. So working on the pod isn't working on the pod physically from the month of May, and that was a time when there was a drought in Chennai. Like there was no water supply in Chennai, and many of the team members who were a part of the team had to go back because there was no water supply in the hostels. So the team was left with only a few members who can work on the pod. And at that time, like we didn't give up. Like we kept our Josh high, and we were we were able to assemble and test the pod components in just this 2 months time frame. And also it's a point to note that to ship the pod to SpaceX, we at least require 1 month because it's very far from here, and we don't get the advantage that the other American teams get. So that was also a challenge put ahead of us. And when we actually reached SpaceX, we were not having any particular workspace to work in, because it was a complete foreign space for us. So that's when the IITM Alumni Association came in and gave us a workspace to work on. And yeah, so we had been working on the pod for these 2 months, and we were actually very tired of the travel. And when we actually were working on the pod in that workspace for the first time, after 2 or 3 hours, every one of us was very tired, and like everyone slept there. And so basically the competition was a 7-day event, where which includes conferences, exhibitions, several tests, pod runs, all those things. And the finale of the competition is the pod run in the 1 mile tube which they have made at SpaceX. So before running the pod in that 1 mile tube, we have to go through a series of tests just to prove that our pod will be safe to run in the track. So as Yash already mentioned, like there were a lot of tests, and unfortunately we were not able to get past through all of those tests, and that's why we were not allowed to run the pod in the 1 mile tube. But just to get an opportunity to showcase our work like at an international level, like SpaceX, was a big thing in itself. And yeah, a photo with Elon. So that was the main highlight of our journey at SpaceX. And yeah, so it was like Elon Musk was like casually strolling around SpaceX at the grand finale of the event, and he was going around every competitive team's area just to see what they have done, asking the questions here and there, technical or non-technical. And that's where they came to Avishkar Hyperloop stall, and Avishkar Hyperloop, and he actually interacted with the team, and we also interacted with him regarding how we built the pod, and he also told us about the electric vehicle area which he's working on. And the one thing which is very funny about the photo with Elon is that whoever took the photograph with Elon Musk, like the team photograph, had actually deleted the photograph from his camera, and we had to like search for it in the recently deleted photos just to have the photo with Elon Musk. And that was a very funny moment that happened. And as Yash already mentioned, like the 2.0 journey, where we had to actually convince people that Hyperloop is something which is possible. Hyperloop is a viable solution to the transportation. That required a lot of effort from our seniors, who went on through different seminars, exhibitions, talked to a lot of people in the corporate side as well as government, and through their efforts in like diversifying the sponsorship and in streamlining the sponsorship process, in asking them to like fund our project, was a very big challenge. And and the efforts were reflected at IIM Bangalore. So one of our seniors, one of our team heads from the 3.0 team, who is currently doing his MBA in IIM Bangalore. One of his professors actually gave a presentation on Avishkar Hyperloop and how this sponsorship campaign was effective, and that is how effective our marketing campaigns have been. And yeah, after the SpaceX journey was completed, after the 3.2 team was recruited, we were looking forward to participate once again in the SpaceX Hyperloop pod competition 2020. But at that time, they were thinking of like Elon Musk was planning on building a 10-kilometer vacuum tube instead of the 1-kilometer tube which he already had, and also have a turn inside the tube. And because of which the competition was postponed a bit. And during that year, we didn't have a competition to participate in. And also due to and months later, the coronavirus pandemic hit the world, and we were asked to go back to our homes and like work from there. So that was in March 2020 last year, and that time there was not much interaction because we are a team which works on projects which are hands-on. We can't work virtually because we need to design and like we need to work on things physically only. So that time was a very difficult time for the team where there was not much interaction, not much energy within the team, and to actually rebuild, like go through a rebuilding phase was very difficult. So in the month of October, we recruited a very fresh new recruits, and they were very much eager to work on Hyperloop. And at that time, the European Hyperloop week was announced in the month of November, and within just a 15-day time span, like we actually completed the entire pod design, and we were having the pod assembled. The pod design, and so basically, as I already told, the student projects require hands-on work, and we were actually working virtually live, virtually from our homes. The simulation and the design phases were done from our homes, but we had to come back to campus to work on the pod. So that's where the administration allowed us to come back to campus in the month of April, and we had to go through a 14-day quarantine period. And just after we came out of the quarantine period, every one of us were eagerly waiting to start working on the pod so that we can complete the testing and assembly phase, and we can go to Spain to show our work and win the awards. But unfortunately, the second wave of the coronavirus pandemic came, and everything had to be halted. The manufacturing testing phase had to be halted because of the coronavirus pandemic, and we had to take a very harsh decision of not going to Spain after working for 4 to 5 months from our homes very hard on this, and actually committing ourselves to come to campus in the pandemic situation. Taking the decision was very difficult. Our faculty advisors and our advisors helped us a lot in that aspect, and but we did not give up at that. We actually continued our research. We continued our testing and assembly phases, and we were able to make the pod in just 2 to 3 months time frame. And so in that regard, we were responsible global citizens. And yeah, now I'll hand over to Vibhor to take over.
Yeah, thanks, Bharat. So as Bharat was mentioning, we were working out on various components like breaking LIM hands-on in the Center for Innovation or workspace which we are allotted. So there are two interesting stories which I would like to share. One is with the braking, and one is with the battery pack. So while we were assembling the braking setup, the braking which we had was magnetic braking, which has an array of magnets arranged at the front of the actuator. So if we bring the two actuators close enough, they would stick to it, and that would be very difficult as they would produce approximately 80 kgs of force. So removing those two actuators after that was very difficult. So once our ex team head Neil Balar like he stuck his finger between those two actuators, and it was like very painful to remove those two actuators. And we tried out various methods, like we tried out removing those actuators with the help of spanners, and like two people were pushing, like pulling these two actuators together. This is one of the case like where we try to work very critically. And apart from this, while working on the battery pack voltage, we assembled a battery pack of 240 volts in house, and assembling that was very tough job. So while assembling, uh, one of the team members, Kishan, he got a shock while touching the two ends of the battery pack. So like it was fortunate that he was wearing rubber gloves, so he didn't feel that much, but that shock was approximately 240 volts, so it would have given him a huge shock which would lead to some hospital. So these two are some of the stories, interesting stories, while we were working in the workspace while building the 4.0 pod. Yeah, but so after this, I think into the future.
So yeah, I was just like to add, like if you guys have any, if you have any questions, you can ask in the chat box, or maybe if you can also unmute and ask the questions.
I think there's one question which you could answer.
So how management and R&D works with academic pressure. So that is a very nice question. I'm sorry, there's a background noise. So yeah, so like student teams from engineering colleges basically have to go through this phase. Like we are just engineering students who are working on our projects here, but apart from the engineering like academics, we also get some spare time to work on something which we like. So people generally can choose let's say arts or some sports activities, or technical activities, that let's say. And they like to spend their spare time in doing something which they are passionate about, or with something which they want to use, use this time in. And that's where we actually so our team also is one a part of a part of the technical activity which we do. And yeah, like I would say that like we actually have a lot of like we actually have to put in a lot of effort than the other teams that we have, technical teams. Yeah, Lovish says, can you please tell 4 options to get funds for startups? Yes, do you want to like to take up this question?
Yeah, brother. So, 4 option for startups. Startups as in our like for Aviskar purposes. Yeah.
How to raise
So
funds?
one of the key ways that we raise funds is, of course, like by the way of sponsorship and by corporate social responsibility. From various companies, multinational companies that have huge CSR funds, and as Hyperloop is a sustainable research area, so that is one place from where we get funds. Second is we get some donations from alumni who support our research, who are interested in research, and we interact with them from time to time. So that is one thing. Other than that, since we are now getting involved in very large projects on infrastructure, and we have in the recent time seen some interest from government entities also, like Ministry of Science and Technology, Ministry of Railways. So this year we are also looking to get some funding from the government. You can unmute and talk, I think, Sandeep. Sorry, Lovish. Yeah, like if there is, yeah, not a problem. So in terms of sponsorship, yeah, we have to fight quite hard for it, and that is one area where we actually try to limit ourselves on the funding sides. We are not able to do all the things that we would like to do. For example, in the last year, we wanted to develop a test setup for suspension system to test out the magnetotheological dampers that we have, but we couldn't do that. But yeah, we need to convince sponsors, and last year was especially hard in that regard because of the pandemic. Everyone was very like all the profits and the revenues were almost gone for most of the mainstream companies. So last year was hard, but yeah, sponsorship is one challenge. If that
May I
answers.
quickly add, Lovish, Santhanam here. A quick sort of sense of the sponsorship. The very first sponsorship was for their visit as observers to Hawthorne, and they needed about 4 or 5 lakhs. The students put in about 2. Institute put in about 1 lakh, if my memory serves me right. And they raised about 1.5 lakh at the IIT Alumni Center on a Sunday. A number of our members and guests contributed. The next round, where they built a pod and took the pod and ran the pod at the test track in Hawthorne. For that, the total sponsorship that was raised was about under 1 crore, just under 1 crore. And 20 of them traveled, 24 of them traveled, which is that photograph with Elon Musk. That came from corporates, a large amount from IIT Madras alumni, particularly overseas, and a significant.
Sir, I think you are muted. Ravi sir.
Yeah, I'm sorry. A large amount. For the first time, we got significant sponsorship. And the IIT Madras alumni in the US sponsored in a significant way. Sesh Ram Mohan was the one who drove that effort. And crowdsourcing in India also led to a fairly significant sum. So that's how that close to 1 crore was raised. 2020, we all know what happened. The best laid plans came apart. And 2021, we were gung-ho to raise sponsorships. We were talking to everyone. And then came the decision not to travel. So when that happened, that's when we said, we need to do this in India. Because we don't know, the more we depend on things overseas, the harder or unpredictable things become. So that's when a host of things happened. They started designing the tube. And as they mentioned, they have a number of patents. This will probably be one of the most cost-effective Hyperloop tube designs. And then the institute chipped in a big way. They cleared first 500 meters of a straight area for building the track, and now that's gone up further. Looking ahead, we were talking in tens of lakhs. We are now talking in tens of crores. I guess for it to become a full-fledged Avishkar Hyperloop Foundation, we are talking a few 100 crores. Hopefully, having got so far, we'll find a way of getting there. I hope that clarifies on sponsorship.
Thank you so much, sir. So Lovish has some more questions. I think they were covered by sir in the sponsorship part. Yeah, if there are some more questions that you would like to ask about the technical aspects, maybe like how does Hyperloop work, and how do we create vacuum, or anything in that matter. If you want to ask, maybe you can ask in the chat box. So yeah, if there are any questions, I'll just live. Emergency exits. So yeah, currently we are also working on the Hyperloop infrastructure, where we are designing a full-scale version of the vacuum tube which we can build, and we are also conducting studies, business case studies, as well as some scientific studies as to what can be the optimized number of passenger, and how do we control the passenger flow, uh, and also looking into what can be the distance between two pods running in the same on the same track, and also if in case of emergency, how do we take care of things like vacuum, how do we maintain the vacuum is stable inside the tube, and yeah, also in emergency, how do we make sure that in emergency we're able to take the pod to the end. Yes. Yeah, so
In terms of emergency exit, one of the proposals that we currently have is like having an emergency door exit, a mechanical door, every 2 kilometers of the tube. So, in case of a failure, which we will of course take care to be extremely minimal, and since there are no wear and tears in the setup, uh, but still, in the case of a failure, the emergency exit doors will always be nearby.
vacuum will have no oxygen. So yeah, so as you rightly pointed out, so we'll be maintaining pressure inside the tube at very low pressures, around 2000 pascals, like whatever is the optimum pressure required to run a Hyperloop at 1,000 kilometers per hour, let's say. So that also is something which we're working on. But yeah, we have to ensure that there is, so it is similar to like traveling in an airplane at 35,000 feet, like where we have around uh, some 100 to like 1,000 pascals of pressure at that height, and where, so as you can imagine, an airplane is basically atmosphere. An airplane is pressurized before each travel, right? So it is pressurized to atmospheric pressure inside the cabin, and that's how the passengers are able to feel that they are able to get the oxygen. So similar to that, Hyperloop also will work the same way. We'll be having the pods pressurized at the vacuum at the atmospheric pressure.
I think there's one question regarding mechanical aspect, especially aerodynamics.
Yeah.
So I'll take that. So as Bharat rightly pointed out, like the pressure is not zero. So the pressure is there around 1,000 or 200 to 1,000 Pascal. But that plays a significant role when a pod is moving at such high speeds. So the vacuum tube is a closed chamber, which does not give the space for air to flow properly. So that becomes a challenge of choking. So the choking comes into the picture when aerodynamics is considered. Yeah. So I think that answers the question.
Yeah. Yeah. So the aerodynamics. Yeah. Correct. Answer.
Yes, sir, sure, we can. So basically, we have filed a patent for tube infrastructure. So we have come up with a novel design in which we require a lot less amount of material from other teams, and also we are on the process of patenting the circular induction motor, which we came up for levitation purposes. These are the two patents which we are currently working on.
And like one interesting thing about the patent which we filed for the tube design is that it is like the cost of that tube is 1/4 of all the cost proposed by all the other startups and teams all around the world, and that is And that is because of a technical advantage which we get from our design. And yeah, so that is also one thing. Sure, sir. Sure, Anand, sir. We will. Understood, sir. Yeah.
No, I think Ravi, we should have an offline meeting because both Virgin Group and Hyperloop TT, which is in my view what in India we'll call a Benami of Elon Musk, is approaching everybody in India. We haven't yet signed up as Tata Group, but they are knocking on every door, and these guys are extraordinarily well funded. They are claiming all kinds of influence with the government and so on. So if you're going to do this, we better do it right. It's good. It's great to have an Indian effort and especially a student effort. But I don't want you all to be just steamrolled by some equivalent or perhaps even lower technology. So let's have an offline chat. I'm in London right now. I'll be back only after about a week or 10 days, but I'll ping you, Ravi.
Most certainly, Anant, I will set it up. Let me just add a few thoughts to what you said. One of the heartening features has been the way the government has reacted. I will not get into specifics, not just the institute, not just those of us who are interested in technology, but those parts of the government which look at planning the nation's future have taken a keen interest. Second is, as we set up the 500-meter and then the 10-kilometer test track, we need to create an institution to fund it, to run contests, because contests bring diverse ideas, and diverse ideas lead on to creativity. Bharat and Vibhor and Yash and all have been very modest. They have made a small transformer, an extremely small transformer which goes on the pod that converts DC to a 440 volt three-phase AC. Such a transformer doesn't exist anywhere. So in the process of building the Hyperloop, and just the pod so far, a lot of innovations have come up. And as they have begun their journey on building the infrastructure, which is the track, again, innovations are coming up. So this is going to be not only the Hyperloop, what our team Avishkar is doing is not only going to deliver a Hyperloop, but it's going to deliver a host of very practical technologies. And therefore, the value is Hyperloop plus a lot more. I'm glad that you are keen, Anant. We will connect up as soon as you're back, and we'll take you through the whole process so that you can also give us your inputs and on how you can support us and taking this further.
Oh, thanks.
Thank you so much, sir. So, one more interesting aspect that maybe the government might be interested in is how, what are the sorts of employment opportunities that this Hyperloop ecosystem can provide to India. So Hyperloop is something which involves participation of every technology. So mechanical department or electrical, or let's say in the electromagnetic departments. And it requires participation from all those subsystems. And that's where it basically requires the most effective participation from these subsystems to make a Hyperloop work. Because we're talking about a revolution in the technology. It's not something which has been done before. So that is also which is very interesting. Um,
भैया
yeah, so if there are no more questions, maybe I'll just go on to the stories which I was telling. Or sir, is there time? Hello, sir. Sir, do we have time for the event or? Ravi sir, I think you are on mute.
Bharat,
Yes, sir.
we are at 7:30.
Yes, sir.
So the audience should decide which is the one or two stories they want to hear.
Yes, sir. I will take the liberty to tell those stories, sir. If that is okay. Yes, sir. Yes, so I'll just like to add on to the point which Ravi sir told that for in the past 4 years we have been able to develop innovative tech at small scale levels. Basically, before actually testing and implementing it at a full scale level, we need to make a laboratory test setup of that technology and test it. So over the years we have worked on propulsion systems such as the linear induction motor. So the first version of a linear induction motor was power optimized. It was designed such that it can work in a very low power environment, and because of this reason it was a very heavy motor, around 25 kilograms. And the next iteration of the linear induction motor which we built, it was last year. It was a very compact and a very efficient model, and it was a 12 kilogram LIM, the motor, and it was the first time that a linear induction motor was implemented on a Hyperloop pod in India. So that's where I talk about into the future. So we were the first student project team from India to be able to implement a linear induction motor, a continuous propulsion method on a Hyperloop pod. So that was also something which was very extraordinary. And yeah, we also have been developing certain small scale test setups for levitation. For levitation, as Vibhor mentioned, we are already trying to file a patent for the circular induction motor, which works similar to the linear induction motor. And we also have done various laboratory tests in our workplace, and the results are very impressive. And as of now, we don't have any levitation on the pod. The pod that we make does not levitate, but this year we also plan to levitate our Hyperloop pod. So one of the main goals for the team this year is to build the 500-meter vacuum tube in the IIT Madras Discovery Campus, and also to make a Hyperloop pod which contains all the scalable Hyperloop technologies such as the linear induction motor, levitation, the in-house inverter, and yeah. So all these onto a Hyperloop pod and actually run our own pod inside that 500-meter vacuum tube. So until now we had been going to competitions, and so we actually ran our pod in this. We actually thought of running our pod at SpaceX, but why not reverse the entire scenario? Why not actually make our own vacuum tube and make our pod run in the tube? So that is the ambition that we have for this year. And yeah, before that there were a lot of ups and downs that we had. So the first pod run for the last year's pod was a bit challenging because there were a lot of issues that we were facing in the technical aspects. And yeah, so I'll take the question afterwards. So for the first pod run, we had to actually wait for around 32 hours of non-stop hard work without sleep, without proper eating, and that was a very, very, very challenging time. We had to go through very, very small issues that we were having in the pod, and just when we were about to there was a time where like we were actually facing a lot of difficulties, and everything that we were doing was going against us. Like nothing was happening in our favor. So that's where we didn't give up, uh, and yeah, we actually did the first static pod run test, and yeah, so that's it. And um, yeah, I think that's the two stories which I wanted to tell. If sir we have time, you can take up more questions maybe. So one of the questions is like, will the high speeds of the Hyperloop affect the passenger sitting inside it? So we have done some studies in this regard as well, regarding what can be the operational acceleration that we have and the operational deceleration of the Hyperloop, such that the passengers inside it do not feel the the G forces. So what we'll do is we'll slowly accelerate to a very high speed over a very long distance, so that the acceleration that they experience is very less. And same goes with braking as well. So similar to airplanes, like airplanes actually start descending from a very long distance before the airport arrives. So similar to that, we will do.
This is Santanam here. I'll quickly add something to what Bharat said. When you're developing things that will actually work in practice, a very important factor is testing. So far, Team Avishkar has developed their own test tricks for every subsystem. And that's one of the reasons why they have been able to get ahead. Looking ahead, as we progress further, the test track will become very critical. And once test track is available and testing and trial and then go back, redo and come back with the next version, that sort of thing is possible, then one, Team Avishkar's pod development will accelerate. Two, many other Team Avishkars will come up in our country. It's only when and people from other countries will come to us, students from other countries will come to us for testing. Only when that sort of environment of diverse ideas being tested out and experiencing that happens, I believe we can really come up with something which is a top class, implementable, practicable design solution. Just a thought.
Yes, sir. And one more achievement that for the team last year was the pod run demonstration event. So this was an event where we ran our pod for the first time in front of a live audience. As of now, like we were doing the test in our lab, in the workplace, and everything was done in front of us. But we invited an audience to see the pod run demonstration, and we also were joined by our IITM director, our deans, and our sponsors, and also Dr. V.K. Saraswat sir, who is an honorable member of the Niti Aayog, who actually attended the event virtually. And he also shared some of his ideas on how to maintain vacuum and why does and on the aspect of levitation in India, that we don't have anything levitating in India as of now, like maglev and the magnetic levitation trains are in Japan and other countries, but not in India. So those were his concerns, and he also was very impressed with our work. Yes, Mahima, yeah, it's a very nice question that, yeah, like why build something from scratch again when we already have one thing which can achieve similar top speeds. But the major difference is that Maglevs run at very, very high operational costs, and not every people in the, like, not every person can afford that much cost, right? The transportation cost. So Hyperloop can be the solution for that cost effective as well as high speed travel. And that's where our, that's where we want to go. So just to give a comparison, that one of the case studies which we performed, so the Chennai to the Chennai to Bangalore Hyperloop corridor can be operational at a similar cost as the air travel, with just 30 minutes travel time, while airplane, like if we take into account the travel cost between airport as well as between airport to the pickup location, it can add up to 3 to 4 hours of total travel time. But if we are able to build Hyperloop in the city centers itself, in the heart of the cities, that can reduce the travel time by a very large amount. And our proposal is that it can be reduced to 30 minutes. Yes, sir. So if there are no more questions, maybe I'll just conclude the presentation. So it's been a wonderful opportunity for the team to be able to present our work at such a stage, and we are very, very happy to be able to do so. And thanks to the Pan IIT chapter and the IIT Association group for allowing us to be able to show the work. And we at Aavishkar Hyperloop are striving towards building a Hyperloop at a scalable level for India, in India. And we'll be needing all the support that we can get from you all, as well as the country. And yeah, thank you all for attending the event.
Thank you, Bharat. Thank you, Vibhor. Thank you, Yash. And thank you to the entire Aavishkar team. And a big thank you to the audience. It is you who make the whole process worthwhile. I'm sure, Bharat, you'll have a lot of questions. We will find a mechanism going forward to engage much more with the IIT alumni fraternity as well as the industry, which is really the remit for IIT Alumni Center Chennai. So thank you very much to all of you. Great job, but a lot more to be done. So get on ahead. We are all there to support you and back you up.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.
Thank you, everyone.